Nebraska's fascinating, right? Nebraska's fascinating because of year 2 of Dylan Raiola, upgrades at receiver. The line should finally be pretty decent after a long stretch of the line not being pretty decent.
Yeah.
Changes in the running back room, but there's still some continuity there, of course. I think Dante Dowdell's off to Kentucky, I believe. And so the expectation after a very pickleball-y 2024 of short routes and not stretching teams downfield all that often is that Nebraska will at least be more varied. They're not going to be bombing it down the field all the time now with Dylan Raiola, but the threat should be there. It's Isaiah Hunter and Dane Key.
And Dane Key, yeah, both of whom I really like.
Yeah.
I like what they did by bringing those guys in. And to the point, Dylan Raiola showed a ton of promise last season. He completed 66% of his passes. It was a 12-10 ratio, so it wasn't always the cleanest, but 112th nationally in air yards per target. Which, what does that mean? Well, it means they weren't really stretching the field a whole lot in the passing game. And I think both Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter give him more of a downfield threat. If there is one thing I'm watching, it is that basically A-dot number again, they call it, or air yards per target. I want to see if that number ticks up at all now that they've got two guys that I think are more vertical than what they had last year. This offense is going to be better. If there is more of a vertical threat, that's what they need. I think it will get better because, as you said, this could be the year where the line flips from being a weakness to more of a strength.
You'd hope.
Which would be a big deal. I think a very underrated aspect of this team could be better offensive line play.
Mm-hmm.
It just would make the whole thing better. So I'm excited about Nebraska as well. The other thing that I would add, and I was looking for my snow sounds, so forgive me if you already said this, but anytime you bring Matt Rhule, at least in the college ranks, anytime we've brought Matt Rhule into a new program builder type situation, we got about a 36-month germination process before we start seeing those succulent Rhule fruits start to appear.
You got to water that bamboo. You don't first see the growth, but steady day by day watering. You'll get there.
You will get there. So I think it's not only a matter of the offensive line getting better, but also trying to figure out what this defense is going to be now with Tony White leaving.
Yeah.
And that's really where my concern is, I think, the most with this team. I think the offense is going to improve. I do tend to hand wave some of the defensive concerns with Matt Rhule, since he usually does field a pretty good defense. It's kind of his thing.
Got Phil Snow.
Got Phil Snow.
Yeah.
I mean, John Butler, right? I just think it's a little more complicated this year, since both the defensive line and the linebacker core are more of a question. And, anytime you've got a successful guy like Tony White leaving, it's unclear to me what this defense looks like under John Butler now. Are they going to stray from the scheme that we saw last year? If so, by how much? You might be surprised to know this about John Butler. I don't know if this is in anything that you read, but his approach actually might be a little bit more aggressive in attacking than his predecessor.
Okay. I'm ready.
So, something else to watch for. I think we see a marginal step back on defense, but probably not enough to really...
Very active in the portal. Spenders along the defensive line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Tony White was not a big blitzer.
No. And I think we're going to see, again, more of that aggressive attacking mentality here.
Sure.
John Butler. There are two distinct seasons within Nebraska's season.
Okay.
You got the first 8 games, 5 of which look very winnable to me. 3 could be coin tosses.
Okay.
And then you've got the final 4 games, 3 of which look very losable.
Okay.
So how they do in that first 2/3 of the season is ultimately going to determine what their ceiling is with respect to the win-loss record. But I definitely think, just bigger picture, how the line holds up, and if they are able to establish more of a downfield threat, that's going to determine their ceiling as an offense.
Agree. The good news also for Nebraska. So they have, the first game is at Arrowhead?
First game's Kansas City. It's a Thursday night game against Cincinnati on August the 28th. Yeah.
Right. So that's week 1. It's ahead of week 1 after, between 0 and 1. The quarterback / passing attacks faced. If what they are up front is a concern, both in terms of the pass rush and helping out the secondary, which they return a bunch in the secondary, correct?
Yeah.
It's kind of good news for Nebraska. If you're looking at quarterbacks and passing attacks faced, they're getting Michigan in the first month at home. So whatever Michigan's offense is going to be, it's not going to be that by that game. I don't believe. If it's a true freshman at quarterback, if it's, a healing Mikey Keene, whatever it is, it's Michigan State at home with a bye the week before. I don't know if we're fully there with Michigan State yet. I guess we're going to get to that soon. It is Maryland and Minnesota on the road with some combination of youth and inexperience at quarterback there, and not in Minnesota's case, bringing in a ton of recent success downfield. Yeah. UCLA, big old question mark. Northwestern, probably not going to be incredible through the air. USC is at home, but should be somewhat strong through the air. Penn State should be good through the air. And Iowa is, despite all of your love and tingliness, still a big question.
There's so many tingles.
So the reason that's interesting to me, even though I'm not as high on Nebraska as you are, is what is the number Nebraska needs to consistently score, get to say, okay, they've definitively improved under Dana Holgorsen. Like there's more of a vision, there's more of a plan, there's more comfort there. And that gives you, if you feel decently about the Nebraska defense, gives you a decent enough cushion. The number in my mind is like 27 points.
27?
Somewhere between 27 and 30 points. If Nebraska's consistently in that zone, which they very much were not last year, that's the thing. You're going to have to see that bump. You're going to have to see more explosive plays. You saw a little bit of it in the bowl game. You're going to have to see that bump from Nebraska because fielding, and it is the Big Ten, but fielding a team week in and week out that needs to win 20-17, 17-14 just leaves you no margin for error. And there's still a lot of questions and new faces on both sides of this Nebraska team. So that's where I'd feel a lot more comfortable if after, I don't know, the Michigan game, I guess, you get 3 weeks, including a Cincinnati game on a neutral site. If by the time we get into like week 6 or 7 and like they're scoring 30 points, 33 points against decent teams, Cincinnati and Michigan, then I'm like, okay, this Nebraska team is worth all of our collective attention. But I'm not there yet.
I think all that's fair. And the only other thing that I would point out about this offense, because you mentioned Dana Holgorsen.
Yeah.
I am curious, obviously, about the line, about how they integrate maybe more of an attacking, aggressive mentality with respect to their vertical passing game. I'm curious to see what they do as a running offense as well, because we didn't see much of it until Holgorsen took the reins last season, and it was at that point we started to see a little bit more out of Emmett Johnson.
Right.
Who's going to be their starting running back this year. And so I'm just hoping that we see a little bit more of a cohesive approach on offense, that it's not all on Dylan Raiola. It's not pickleball. They're
Right.
able to kind of make all of these parts work together to make the team better. They were 7-6 a year ago. The over-under this year is 7.5. That's another over-under I feel pretty good about.
Really?
The issue, though, with Nebraska this season, and I mentioned this on part 1, you could talk me as much into 10-2 as you could 6-6. I think there's a pretty wide disparity of results there. 9-3 for me.
Yeah.
For Nebraska this year.
Wow. I think I'm closer to 7-5. I think I'm right on that number. I'm not there. I need it from the offense, and I like the pop they've added at receiver. I just need to see it all come together over 4 quarters against, take your pick, Michigan, Iowa.
Yeah.
I mentioned the passing offenses on here. Could be a lot of stingy defenses on here, depending on what. I mean, obviously, we think that about Penn State, Iowa, probably Minnesota, that there's a lot of change there, probably Michigan. Like, there's a good amount. Northwestern, I think, will be okay on defense. That's the thing to me, is like, yeah, it's fine. It's a good July story, but push comes to shove, and they're winning games 10-7. You're like, ugh, I don't know, man.
Here we go again. This is the problem with me making some of these proclamations in late July, like Iowa, Nebraska. There were some other teams we talked through yesterday. I am putting my chips on a bunch of unproven units, and that's never a great idea,
Right.
Until it is. But for now, that's sort of the downside to this approach.
Also,
but I like both these teams we've talked about so far a pretty good amount.
It wasn't like a terribly long time ago that we were watching Charlie Brewer get destroyed physically because they couldn't figure out offensive line. They couldn't figure out how to be creative on offense. And they were winning despite it. I just think it's really hard to win despite your quarterback getting shelled all the time and not being able to bomb the ball down the field occasionally.
I'm with you. So you're going 7-5.
7-5. Bowl team for sure.
9-3, baby.
A 7-5 with upside, but I don't know. I've been burned before.